What if I told you that the most dangerous thing happening to your body right now isn't something you can feel? No pain. No alarm. No obvious warning. Just a slow, invisible process unfolding inside you, day after day, shaping your energy, your weight, your memory, and your future, completely beneath your awareness. Most people over 50 are walking around with not one, but 5 hidden biological risks already active inside their bodies. And the terrifying part? Standard blood tests often miss them entirely. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what these 5 risks are, how they silently connect to one another in ways that most doctors never explain, and what you can start doing, starting today, to protect your body, preserve your strength, and stay independent far longer than you ever thought possible. And I promise you, by the time we reach the 5th risk, something is going to click. Everything is going to make sense in a way it never has before. So stay with me through all 5. Because missing even one piece of this means missing the whole picture. Let me start with a patient I once saw. He was in his early 60s. Active, educated, careful about his health. He came in not because something was wrong, but just for a routine check. And he sat across from me with complete confidence and said, "All my reports are fine, doctor. I feel okay." And you know what? He was right. On paper, everything looked acceptable. Blood sugar, normal. Cholesterol, within range. Blood pressure, fine. But when we looked deeper, when we went beyond the standard numbers, we found something that changed everything. Early insulin resistance. Mild but persistent inflammation. An immeasurable decline in muscle mass that wasn't visible in a mirror yet, but was absolutely real. None of these findings were dramatic on their own. None of them would have triggered a referral or a prescription. But together, silently, slowly, invisibly, they were already laying the foundation for serious disease. This is what most people never get told. And this is exactly what we're uncovering today. The first hidden risk is one you've probably heard of. But I guarantee you haven't heard it explained like this. It's chronic inflammation. And before you move past that word, I need you to understand something important. Inflammation is not your enemy. In fact, it's one of the most essential processes your body has. When you get a cut, your immune system floods the area with healing cells. Redness, swelling, warmth, that's inflammation doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's controlled, targeted, and temporary. It does its job and then it stops. That's the version of inflammation your body was designed to use. But here's where everything changes after the age of 50. For reasons connected to diet, stress, changes in gut bacteria, declining hormones, and accumulated cellular damage, your immune system can begin to lose its ability to fully switch off. Instead of activating when needed and then going quiet, it remains slightly active, all the time. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a persistent low-level hum of immune activity that never completely stops. Scientists call this inflammaging, a combination of inflammation and aging. And while you feel nothing unusual, tiny immune signaling molecules called cytokines are circulating through your bloodstream constantly, creating a kind of internal friction across every system in your body. They irritate and damage the walls of your blood vessels. They interfere with the way your cells respond to hormones. They affect the neurons in your brain. And here's the part that most people are never told in a doctor's office. Chronic low-grade inflammation has been directly linked in research to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, and even certain cancers. Not as a side effect, as a root cause, as the starting point. And what makes this particularly dangerous is that it doesn't stay in one place. It spreads. It creates downstream effects in systems far from where it began. And those effects lead us directly into the second hidden risk, insulin resistance. Now, the moment most people hear those words, they think diabetes. They think blood sugar. They think, well, that's not my problem. My blood sugar is normal. And that right there is exactly the dangerous assumption I want to address. Because here is the truth that changes everything. You can have completely normal blood sugar levels and still be significantly insulin resistant. This is one of the most important and most overlooked facts in metabolic health today. Here's how it works. Insulin is a hormone produced by your pancreas, and its primary job is to act like a key. It unlocks your cells so that glucose, the fuel your body runs on, can get inside and be used for energy. That's the system working correctly. But over time, particularly after 50, your cells can begin to lose their sensitivity to insulin. They stop responding the way they should. The key no longer opens the door as easily. So your body's response is logical. It produces more insulin to compensate. And for a while it works. Blood sugar stays controlled. Everything on the surface looks fine. But here's what's happening underneath. Those elevated insulin levels, insulin your body is producing in excess just to maintain normal blood sugar, begin to send powerful signals throughout your entire system. They tell your body to store fat, specifically and preferentially around the abdomen. They increase existing inflammation, pouring fuel onto the fire we just talked about. They disrupt your energy levels in ways that are subtle but very real. You start feeling unusually sleepy after meals. Carbohydrate cravings become stronger and harder to ignore. You notice your weight slowly creeping upward even though your eating habits haven't significantly changed. And this process, this silent hidden insulin resistance, can continue for years, sometimes a decade or more, before blood sugar levels finally begin to rise. Before anything shows up on a standard test. And by the time it does show up, significant damage has already accumulated in your blood vessels, your organs, and your metabolic machinery. But here's what I really need you to understand about the connection between these first two risks. Inflammation worsens insulin resistance, and elevated insulin worsens inflammation. They are not two separate problems. They are two parts of the same destructive cycle, each one feeding the other. And as this cycle runs in the background of your body, it begins to pull in a third system, one that most people think of as purely physical, as a matter of appearance or athletic performance. But it is so much more than that. Muscle, specifically, the gradual, largely invisible loss of muscle mass that begins after the age of 50. Medically, this process is called sarcopenia, and it is far more consequential than most people realize. When most people think about muscle, they think about strength, about how you look, about whether you can lift heavy things. But muscle is one of the most metabolically active tissues in your entire body. It is a major site of glucose uptake, meaning your muscles are responsible for pulling significant amounts of sugar out of your bloodstream after you eat. They are a storage site for energy. They support your posture, your balance, your ability to catch yourself if you slip. They are, in a very literal sense, one of your body's most critical organs. And they begin to decline, slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly, starting in your 50s, accelerating through your 60s and 70s if nothing is done to counter the process. The early changes are easy to dismiss. Stairs feel slightly harder. Carrying things feels slightly heavier. Recovery after a physically demanding day takes a little longer than it used to. Easy to attribute to age. Easy to accept as normal. But what's actually happening has profound metabolic consequences. As muscle mass decreases, your body's ability to manage blood sugar efficiently drops with it, which means insulin resistance gets worse. And here is the part of this cycle that most people never see. When insulin resistance is elevated, it actually impairs the ability of muscles to absorb the nutrients they need to maintain and repair themselves. So the muscle breaks down further, which makes insulin resistance worse, which leads to more muscle loss. And running through all of this, worsening at every stage, is inflammation. This is not three separate problems. This is one interconnected system in a slow, self-reinforcing spiral. And inside this spiral, at the very cellular level, something else is happening. Something invisible even to your doctor. Something that determines not just your health, but the very quality and energy of every single day you live. Your mitochondria. Inside virtually every cell in your body, you have tiny structures called mitochondria. Their job, their entire purpose, is to take the nutrients from the food you eat and convert them into a form of energy your cells can actually use. They are the engines that power everything. Every thought you have, every step you take, every heartbeat, every immune response, every repair process happening in your body right now depends on mitochondria functioning well. When they are healthy and efficient, you have energy. Real energy. The kind that gets you through a full day and still leaves something in reserve. But here's what happens as we age, and especially when chronic inflammation and insulin resistance are already active in the body. Mitochondrial function declines. They become less efficient at producing energy, and as a byproduct of that declining efficiency, they begin to produce more oxidative stress, a kind of internal cellular damage that accumulates over time and accelerates aging at the most fundamental level. That persistent fatigue that so many people over 50 experience and accept as normal, That feeling of waking up tired, of running out of steam by early afternoon, of needing more recovery time after doing less, that is not simply age. It is often a direct reflection of mitochondrial decline. And what most people don't know is that this decline is not inevitable. It is significantly influenced by the other processes we've already discussed. Chronic inflammation damages mitochondria directly. Insulin resistance impairs the fuel delivery they depend on. Muscle loss reduces the total number of mitochondria in your body because muscle cells are among the richest sources of these energy-producing structures. Everything connects, everything compounds, and all of it, remarkably, is influenced by a system that most people think about in the simplest possible terms, their gut. The gut microbiome is, without any exaggeration, one of the most powerful and least understood systems in human health. Inside your digestive tract lives an ecosystem of trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses, collectively called your microbiome. And these organisms are not simply passengers. They are active, influential participants in your biology. They help train and regulate your immune system. They influence how efficiently you extract energy and nutrients from food. They produce compounds that travel through your bloodstream and affect your brain, your mood, your mental clarity, your stress response. They communicate constantly with your body in ways that researchers are only beginning to fully understand. But here is what we do know. As we age, and particularly in response to processed diets, chronic stress, antibiotic use, and sedentary habits, the balance of this microbial community can shift. Beneficial bacteria decline, harmful bacteria proliferate. And when this happens, something critical begins to break down. The lining of your gut, which acts as a highly selective barrier allowing nutrients to pass through while blocking harmful substances, becomes compromised, more permeable. This is what's commonly referred to as increased intestinal permeability, or in more casual terms, leaky gut. Bacterial fragments and other particles that should remain inside your digestive tract begin slipping into your bloodstream. Your immune system, encountering things that don't belong there, responds exactly as you'd expect. With inflammation, systemic, widespread, persistent inflammation. And now you're back to the very first risk, but stronger and more deeply rooted. Because this inflammation isn't coming from one source, it's being continuously fed from your gut every single day, with every meal that further disrupts that microbial balance. And the cascade continues. Gut-driven inflammation worsens insulin resistance. Worsened insulin resistance impairs nutrient absorption in the gut. Impaired gut health leads to poor muscle nutrition. Declining muscle accelerates metabolic dysfunction. And at every level, mitochondria are struggling to keep up with the energy demand of a body under this much internal pressure. 5 risks, 5 systems, 1 interconnected chain. And every single link influences every other link. This is the picture most people never see. Not because the information doesn't exist, it does, and the science behind it is solid and growing, but because our medical system tends to look at these things in isolation. Your inflammation marker is slightly elevated. Let's watch it. Your blood sugar is normal, nothing to worry about. You're a little tired, that's aging. You've gained some weight around the middle, eat less, exercise more. And none of that is wrong. But none of it captures what's actually happening. What's actually happening is a system-wide shift. A biological environment inside your body that is slowly, quietly, consistently moving in a direction that increases your risk for serious disease, metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, loss of physical independence. And the most important thing I can tell you is this. The time to address these risks is not when they become obvious. The time is now. Before the symptoms are loud, before the test results are alarming, before the disease is established. Because the biology that drives all 5 of these risks, inflammation, insulin resistance, muscle loss, mitochondrial decline, gut imbalance, responds to your daily choices more than almost anything else. Movement is one of the most powerful interventions known to science for all 5 of these systems simultaneously. Consistent physical activity, not extreme, not punishing, but regular and progressive, reduces inflammatory markers, improves insulin sensitivity, preserves and builds muscle mass, stimulates mitochondrial regeneration, and supports the diversity of your gut microbiome. Nutrition matters not just for calories but for biological signaling. Fiber-rich vegetables, legumes, and whole grains feed the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Anti-inflammatory foods like fatty fish, olive oil, and colorful produce reduce that internal fire. Adequate protein at every meal supports muscle maintenance in ways that most people dramatically underestimate. Sleep, real, consistent, quality sleep, is when your body repairs cellular damage, regulates hormonal balance, and clears the metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. Stress, when chronic, elevates cortisol in ways that directly worsen insulin resistance, disrupt gut bacteria, and drive inflammation. Managing it is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. None of this is about perfection. Perfection is not the goal and never has been. Consistency is the goal. Small decisions, made with intention, repeated across days and weeks and months, those decisions accumulate into a fundamentally different biological environment, one that supports your energy, your strength, your clarity, and your independence far into the decades ahead. What I want you to take from today is not fear. Fear without direction is useless. What I want you to take is clarity. The clarity that comes from understanding that the quiet changes you may already be noticing, the energy that isn't quite what it was, the weight that behaves differently, the recovery that takes just a little longer, these are not random. They are not simply the price of getting older. They are signals from a system that is asking for attention. And the fact that you are hearing this now, before a crisis, before a diagnosis that forces your hand, means you have something incredibly valuable. Time and the awareness to use it well. These strategies support your health. They do not replace medical care. If you have existing conditions, please work with a qualified healthcare provider who can guide you appropriately. But what you do daily, how you move, what you eat, how you sleep, how you manage the demands on your nervous system, matters more than most people in medicine are willing to say out loud. It matters enormously, and your body is worth that investment.